Today is Monday, June 9th. I'd like to call this meeting to order with 65 out of 100 members present, constituting a quorum. Before I hand it over to Seth, I just have a couple of announcements. The first being, I'd like to welcome the newest member of the RTM in District 5, Jane Matthews, was just caucused in. Welcome to Jane. So District 5 is now complete. There are still one vacancy that remains in District 1 and District 3. If you know anyone in those two districts, please spread the word. My second announcement moves us looking ahead to November. I know there's been a lot of chatter this evening and today regarding this topic, but I'll bring you all up to speed, as this is our last meeting before the summer. For those of you whose term is ending in November 2025, if you're not sure, take a look at the website. That information is there, but if you still have a question, please contact me. I'm happy to talk to you about that. As you know, the RTM recently modified the process by which incumbent candidates make known their intention to return to the ballot. What you'll need to do are two things. The first is to notify the town clerk in writing of your intent to run. My preference is to have that via email. I'm trying to get away from paper as much as possible. We also then have an electronic version of me receiving it, of you sending it, and I can store it. And God forbid there's a problem, the place burns down, I still have that record electronically. So one, please email me your intent to run. On that email, the only other piece of information which is very important is the name by which you would like to be identified on the ballot. You have a little bit of discretion here, quite honestly. If you're known by a middle name, use that name. Use the name that the community knows you as. You want to be elected. You do not need to use your legal first name. Mr. Cameron? If you have a nickname, a shortened name, your middle name, please indicate as such in that email, and I will make sure it's reflected accordingly on the ballot. The second piece of information that you'll need to give me within 10 days of that email is what's called the SEEK form. It's a Security Election Enforcement Commission form. It indicates to me and to the state as to how you're going to finance your campaign. That form is on the Secretary of State's website, being distributed right now, and also on the town clerk's page on the website, and it's on the page for the representative town meeting on the website. So if you'd like to return it to me tonight, I'm more than happy to take it, make sure it's signed, make sure it's completed correctly, and also follow up with that email. So those are the two pieces of information. I need your intent to run no later than the first business day of September. First business day of September. That was recently changed in the April resolution that the RTM passed. You guys all got an extra week. If you miss that deadline, there are other avenues. We're not going to go into it right now, but that's not the last straw, but it'll be more difficult. If you miss September, it's going to be a more difficult process, but not impossible. So are there any questions on that? Okay, fantastic. So I look forward to getting all your emails for those of you who are on the ballot this year. And now I can turn it over to Seth. Thanks.
Welcome, everyone, and congratulations. This is a time when folks may be moving on to other places besides Darien, but we got a great crowd here tonight, and that's terrific. Great attendance. Now, November 4 is when the election comes up, but we sort of gotten a head start here to get everybody filling out paperwork and getting themselves registered if they know they're going to run in the fall, or if they know they have to run to keep their position. So I just want to bring that to your attention. It wasn't accidental, but if you look at September 1, that's before we meet again. So it's time to address the paperwork now. Another thing, a note from the Darien Harbor Master. The Advisory Commission on Coastal Waters and the Darien Harbor Master will conduct a Q&A session tomorrow, Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, and on Wednesday. The RTM's committees assigned to the harbor ordinances will conduct a public hearing to get the public's input beginning at 7:30 p.m. Comments will also be accepted by email to darien.rtm@darienct.gov through Friday. On a further note, I ask without objection to add the purchase of the tables and chairs for Great Island to the agenda tonight. Do I have any objection? Thank you. I'll put that in after the update on Great Island. We'll take up the purchase of the tables and chairs. On another item, the First Selectman contacted me and wanted to make you aware of a House bill that's pending. He has a little presentation, and what I'll do is, without objection, have him speak after the acceptance of a Sedan gift. So, without objection, I'll add him to the agenda as well. I'm sorry, Jack. Give me a little louder. Don't move yet, but just give it to me a little louder.
We do all three resolutions before John speaks.
Seth, that's not being picked up as recording, FYI.
That's what I'm sorry, what?
Repeat the question, Seth.
Just for the audio.
Oh, yeah, thank you. The question is, can we do all the votes before? And yes, I have the presentation of the First Selectman as after item 6.
Well, that doesn't do it. Because we have, the benches become item 7, and so John would be item 8.
Right, that's right. As I said, we'll take up the purchase of the tables and chairs, et cetera, after the update on Great Island. I call it 4.5, being halfway between 4 and 5. Okay. Without objection, we'll accept the agenda as modified. Next is, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of May 12. Can I have a motion? Yes, thank you. Ralph, second there, yes. Any corrections, additions, changes? Okay, looks like we're ready to vote. All in favor of approving the minutes for May 12, say aye. Aye. Opposed? I hear none. Abstentions, you can give them to the town clerk later. Next on the agenda is an update on Great Island from Mark Adaletta, our representative to the Great Island Committee.
Tell me when you're ready. Actually, I could start. That first slide is up for a little while. Okay. Good evening. My name is Mark Adaletta, District 5, Rules Committee, Public Works Committee, and your representative to the Great Island Advisory Committee. Yep. Good? There we go. Thanks, Lois. Tonight I will provide what I believe is the 5th or 6th in a series of ongoing updates to this body about Great Island Master Plan. The slides I will reference are from the deck presented at the May 28th GIAC meeting and posted to the website. I've actually put the link on the slide there in case you need it. As a reminder, previous presentations have been posted at the website regularly, making it easy for interested parties to track the evolution of the details over the many months. This is the same source I often reference. Lowest slide 2. Where are we? Having completed the vision plan last year, the GIAC has been meeting 1, 2, or 3 times a month on evolving the master plan. We are approaching the end of this phase. The fourth and final workshop was completed May 17. It's unfortunate the weather did not cooperate. However, 120 attendees participated. About 150 comments were received around access, preservation, recreation, programming, its design, etc. While attendance was down relative to the previous workshops, we were advised by Reed Hildebrand that that is not unusual as the plan evolves, becomes more widely understood, and/or the process becomes more accepted. Next slide. This slide is one of my favorite diagrams. It includes the main elements of the island as they exist today, and as you can see, some of the most discussed near-term possibilities are reflected. Well, you can't really see it, can you? Yeah, well, it's a little hard to see, but we'll keep going. Namely presented here is the lead early access concept. This is the flow and the parking. You can see that on the left side of the diagram. Also reflected are some of the various trails or paths. Well, now I can't see my notes. Let's keep the lights on for the notes. Okay. You know what we'll do? If it helps, we'll pause periodically so you can see that. Unless there's a light here. Yeah, it's not. We'll keep going. Some of the varying terrain, let's see, where do we go? Various paths have been discussed. Okay. Some of the varying terrain the consultants and the committee have taken into consideration or identified, such as woodlands, wetlands, meadows, rocky outcroppings, etc. If you've been tracking the many hours of meetings, you know this is a fraction of the concepts presented, discussed, modified, dismissed, and/or evaluated as this has evolved. Much of what is here depicts what is likely to be in the next phase, early access, assuming the plan is finalized and approved. Please notice there are subsequent phases contemplated, currently called, probably hard to read up there, but currently called 3A base improvements, I'll elaborate shortly, 3B near future, and 3C long-term possibilities. These take into account longer-term plans and the components to be implemented, or not, in steps over many years. And of course, each future project or projects is subject to approval and funding. As such, care is being taken to do upfront what is necessary for basic access, preservation, including architecturally significant buildings, while allow for the possibility of future activation represented in the aforementioned phase 3B and 3C. With regard to the upcoming early access phase, this is likely the first project that may come before this body, the RTM, if it is put forth by the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. In my mind, this is the portion of the plan's greater plan that should address the main access concerns raised by our residents, many of whom cannot enjoy this wonderful property because it is not convenient to get to from their neighborhood. There is no vehicular access, there is no place close to park, they are mobility challenged, and there's minimal information to guide you once you get there. Initial lead ideas include parking near the greenhouse. I think I pointed it out a moment ago, but that's over on the left-hand side. Possibly utilizing the existing root cellar adjacent to that greenhouse, possibly for inconspicuous bathrooms. See if we can see that. That's that little extension to the greenhouse on the left. You got a T It looks like it's in brown. There's like a light green to the right of that. Talked about also has been enabling utilities for future possibilities, wayfinding signage, which I touched on, to help navigate the island and perhaps to begin restoring certain areas or native plantings. To give you a sense of the scale, the parking proposed currently includes approximately 58 spots plus 4 ADA. You can see those. Those are those little white dashes coming down that what would be a new roadway there, and a few little arches down on the left. As I said, 58 plus 4 ADA. A creative idea being considered is to reinforce the lawn to allow for overflow parking of an additional 58 spaces. In my opinion, Real Hildebrand and the committee have been thoughtful in their approach. The flow pattern has been created with pedestrian safety in mind. To that end, sidewalks or pedestrian lanes are being considered when sharing a roadway with vehicles is or was necessary. Further, existing or previously used roads or paths have been utilized where possible for the main flow pattern, minimizing the need to add roads, remove trees to accommodate the possible design. I already noted all of this is concentrated on the left-hand side. Next slide. Phase 3A, as contemplated, and if approved and funded, will focus on base improvements. And I mentioned this in that it may not be in the same timeline as early access, but you'll hear in a moment how some of the items are related. Several of us were surprised to find out that the island utility infrastructure needs to be upgraded. While there's several items, the most obvious being to extend the town's sewer line past where it currently ends at the circle to the existing structures. Ideally, any that are possibly to be utilized before they're utilized. The idea of enhancing utilities at the time the flow improvements has been discussed because obviously it makes sense if they have to go under the roads to do that before the roads go in. That said, the exact sequencing is still being explored. In general, the base improvements phase includes other things like stabilizing buildings for future use, site-wide pedestrian safety enhancements, again, landscaping management, restoration, and some basic amenities. The next slide. Thank you, Lois. This slide is helpful because it shows what I call areas as they were broken down and presented for planning. The names aren't significant, but the approach to each has been thoughtful, intentional, in my opinion, extensive. For each, the near future approach and the longer term possibilities are coming together. The ecology, pedestrian access, roadway flow, ADA access, structural consideration, adaptive uses, amenities, etc., are being explored to the nature of these 6 specific areas. Please visit the actual presentation around this. The material is extensive, detailed, and gives the reader a good perspective of the sheer breadth of possibilities that have been explored. These have been put forth with ecology and existing condition and community input considered. I emphasize that while future possibilities are being preserved in response to the input gathered from the community, early access and base improvements, the near-term activities covering from when the plan is adopted out a few years, emphasizes basic, safe vehicle and pedestrian circulation, that wayfinding I mentioned, and these basic facilities like restrooms and utilities, and some invasive management, and some pathways and passive activities. That's the near-term focus. I will share what I feel are headline items from the broad array of items being presented as possible or likely for each of these 6 areas. I am not trying to convey the evolving plan for each. Those are extensive, and I could not do that justice up here in just a few minutes. The committee has been regularly meeting for sometimes 2 to 3.5 hours to go through it in detail. Instead, I will attempt to give you a flavor of some of the future possibilities for each based on my interpretation of the various items explored for the past year plus. The Great Meadow greenhouse area. That's that yellow area right there. It's also the same area we talked about on the prior slide where the parking is going. This seems to be evolving as the likely arrival area. Near future items that have been discussed include perhaps restoring the tree canopy to greet visitors upon arrival to the island. As I previously noted, the greenhouse is the first building you come to upon entering, and the parking nearby is important. And this is leading to possible first sight of the bathrooms I noted earlier in the root center. The stables. That's that U-shaped building up there in the tan section. This building is in good shape, having been recently occupied. The lead early access possibilities at minimum costs include opening the access to the forecourt. That's the area inside the U. With seating and tables. Ironically, we're going to talk about that a little bit later tonight. And some passive activation. On this item, some of you may have participated in discussions in your respective committees around purchasing these fixtures, the benches and chairs, as they were referred to earlier, as well as possibly some benches to be placed around the property to aid residents, some of whom have requested a place to rest upon arriving and walking to the island or while walking and enjoying the island itself. I think it's implied with the resolution that Seth just added, but I note any purchase of such fixtures is likely not to be covered by the remaining bonding capacity and will come before this body for approval. Mr. Davis and I were in agreement on this, and now it's on the agenda tonight. With respect to benches and tables, I also note that if that item proceeds, that those items will be placed consistent and compliant with the previous approved P&Z plan that was obtained by the town in this regard. The polo field. Where is the polo field? Bottom of the tan section up there. Lead-based improvements or ideas for this area include lawn enhancements for picnicking or passive recreation and improved pedestrian access. Scott Hill. That's the green area there, light green. Base improvements being discussed here include removal of the White House, creating a lawn corridor, restored ledge and landscape, freeing up views of the water. There's a stunning rendition in the full package. Since I mentioned the structure, let me Since I mentioned the structure, please remember that from previous presentations, Reed and Hildebrand deemed this to be one of the buildings of minimal architectural value relative to many of the others on the island after studying all the structures. My sense is that the committee members concur. Next slide, please. The Carriage House. Oh, there we go. This one is one of the more interesting near-future opportunities that's garnered huge enthusiasm from residents at the workshops and is gaining traction among the committee. It is to repurpose this iconic building for dramatic or flexible space suitable perhaps for exhibits, lectures, very small concerts, and events. Here again, I suggest you check out the detailed rendering in the presentation. Also discussed as the near future is the restoration of the wetland ecosystem in this immediate area, which has been adversely impacted or degraded over the decades by past activity. The bridle trail and beach area. Actually, on that, Lois, can we go back one? Thank you. That's that brown portion up there on the top right. Near-term focus on this area has been around preservation of the woodland and beach with passive activities. Preserving the historic bridle trail, path, a coastal trail, and maybe some accessible lookout spots have been discussed. These are some of the best views on the island. That said, the consultants have reported the preliminary ecological study done finds the diversity of species, rarity, and quantity of animals, insects, and vegetation in this area to be high. This is reflected in the light touch and great investigation being done before exploring ideas in this area of the island. It is also part of the reason, along with the Eagle's Nest, that dogs were restricted from the bridle trail back in March. One additional note here is figuring out whether the swimming or paddleboarding or other access activities at the beach specifically is possible and is proving challenging. Where that is at the bottom of the brown area on the right-hand side. It's kind of like a yellow sandish color. This is due to an existing seawall that used to form the swimming area is in disrepair, dangerous, and resolving this is unfortunately outside the scope of the current engagement with the consultants. So if we can go forward 2 slides, I think. Yep, thank you. Estate House, another section on the island on the slide we were just looking at. So the Great Lawn and the Estate House. Near term, the focus is around the lawn being improved or maintained for possible community events connecting to the coastal path and other pathways. This is the area you may have heard about being considered for possible pop-up events, though nothing has been decided and applicable guidelines have not yet been explored fully. Next slide, Lois. Thank you. Sound overlook and playhouse area. Near future items here include simple and possibly paths linking this area to the main trail circulation as discussed earlier. Did I do something? Thank you. So just touching that? Okay. Next slide. Sound overlook in the playhouse area. Near future here is also simple. I think I just read that one. Possibly linking the paths to the main circulation on the island. The Cove Peninsula. Near future here also is focused on continuation of coastal and other pathways. There's no obvious use. This is interesting. There's no obvious use for the existing boathouse, given limitations on what can be done with it due to its location within the flood zone. That said, so far there's a desire to keep it as one of the buildings maintained for possible future use. Next slide. Last slide, just to help you gauge where we are. Before wrapping up, I encourage each of you to go through the presentation from May 28 if you have not. That's why I had it distributed directly to you last week. While there are a myriad of possibilities that continue to be discussed, many fall into the long-term category. These, in my mind, are being retained for future consideration by a successor to the GIAC or future boards of selectmen. The activities included in the early access and the near-term category continue to be focused on pedestrian and traffic circulation, finite parking, safe and expanded or restored pedestrian pathways and walkways, and the basic facilities and utilities noted earlier. All of these near-term items are being contemplated with an eye toward not limiting or undermining items the community has indicated they may want or the town may want to consider in years in the future, embodied in some of those long-term items. In the interim, structures that may have a use in those long-term futures will be stabilized to prevent further deterioration. To clarify, it is expected that any early access or near-term projects will flow through the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and this body, the ultimate RTM, for final funding. Other updates before I wrap up. I note that at the May 28 meeting, the long-delayed access road, referred to as 23A, has cleared legal hurdles and is able to proceed. I remind you that this is the widening of that entrance road to allow two-way traffic, safe pedestrian walkway or sidewalk. This project was previously approved, is distinct from the early access that I've been talking about this evening. And will be funded from the remaining bond proceeds earmarked for acquisition of the property and early access. In my mind, this is the gating item that will allow residents to access the early access or near-term items I just presented in this presentation. My understanding is that this project is hoped to commence in the coming weeks, though it is unclear whether it can be completed before the cooler weather sets in which completion of the paving could be deferred to possibly spring. Finally, the process from here with regard to the master plan, as I understand it, is as follows. The GIAC is looking to have a draft of the final plan at its regular June meeting. I actually don't have the precise date. If all goes well, the GIAC may recommend the plan and vote to send it to the Board of Selectmen at its regular meeting, July 23rd. From there, the plan is in the hands of the Board of Selectmen, and they will take charge of it going forward. With regard to basic early access phase presented earlier, my best guess, is that it could come before the RTM in the fall, probably at the earliest. Well, has to be the earliest because there's no more meetings this summer. Most importantly, please continue to submit your ideas, thoughts, and concerns to the GIA mailbox, on the town website, or during the public comments section of the regular GIAC meetings. Your input is valuable and appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Now for some of the detail. After the Rules Committee met, I was approached by the chair of the Advisory Committee, Great Island Advisory Committee, to take care of an item to add tables and chairs out to Great Island to buy them. So we've put this onto the agenda tonight, and to introduce it and move the item, Jack Davis from the Finance and Budget Committee.
You have to give me a second. That's the third thing on my packet tonight, not the first. I am Jack Davis, District 3, RTM Finance and Budget Chair. I move 2518 to authorize the appropriation of up to $100,000 to fund 16 park benches, 16 tables with umbrellas, and 48 chairs for the use on Great Island. Do I have a second? That's Tom Moore. In this case, I will read the resolution. Whereas the Great Island Advisory Committee will be requesting the Darien Board of Selectmen and the Darien Board of Finance to authorize a special appropriation of 16 park benches, 16 tables with umbrellas, and 48 chairs after the Darien's representative town meeting on June 9th, 2025. And whereas the intent is to have the park, benches, tables, and chairs installed on Great Island during the summer of 2025. And whereas the Darien Representative Town Meeting does not have scheduled meetings in July and August, nor does it anticipate achieving a quorum at a special meeting in July. And whereas the Darien Representative Town Meeting strongly believes that capital appropriations relating to Great Island should require the Darien RTM meeting approval of said appropriations. Now therefore be resolved that the RTM hereby approves and authorizes this appropriation request to be funded by either special appropriation from the general fund or from the reserve fund for non-recurring expenditures contingency in the amount not to exceed $100,000 solely for the purchase of 16 benches, 16 tables with umbrellas, and 48 chairs for the use of Great Island, contingent upon approval of such by both the Darien Board of Selectmen and the Darien Board of Finance. As Seth mentioned, this was brought to our attention after the Rules meeting on June 2nd. It was determined that it was in the best interest of the RTM, and the RTM should address this item without requesting a July RTM meeting. As such, this item is now here before us. Once the costs are finalized, it will be presented to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance for approvals. That is why our RTM vote is contingent upon approval of both of those. The F&B committee discussed in depth the request to purchase benches, tables, and chairs. The committee discussed the following: placement of tables, chairs by the stables, the need for benches on Great Island, the timing to put the benches in during the summer, that it would be unreasonable to expect a special RTM meeting in July to attain a quorum, that the committee felt that it was essential for the RTM to vote on capital initiatives not covered by the original acquisition bond note resolution, that the final cost for benches, tables, and umbrellas and chairs has not yet final. As such, the amount up to $100,000 was used, that the initial purchase of the tables may be less than 16 and may not include umbrellas. The committee also discussed the following, and some of it was addressed by Mark tonight. We are looking forward to that master plan so that for better understanding of what future investments are bringing for us. Where does the next request fall within that vision? That this appears to be an off-cycle request, and we would have preferred that a placeholder would have been put into the 2026 budget. However, under the guidelines that were established by the Board of Selectmen, this does qualify for an off-cycle because, number one, it was discussed prior to the budget process. Number two, it was presented by the town administrator as something important to get done. That's a little catch-all that's in there. We have also requested, and we sort of hear it, a formalized authorization process for future appropriation. What comes before the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and RTM? What will be funded by the original bond note acquisition authorization resolution? What will be funded through the Great Island Maintenance Fund? And what will be funded through other sources? From the initial discussion that we had Thursday, June 5th, there was some clarifications. The benches to be purchased should be 16, not the 19 that the committee discussed. The exact number of chairs, we just assumed they would be 4 each, was a correct assumption, so that number is 48 and was put into the resolution. Umbrellas are now part of the table purchase. We did not know that. The environmental answer to an email sent after the F&B meeting, I want to read. To clarify, none of the proposed benches are located within the wetlands, the 50-foot upland review area, or within FEMA-designated flood zones. We will not be placing benches in the wetlands or uplands reviews at any point. As for the FEMA zones, nothing is currently proposed there either. That said, we understand that if benches were ever to be considered in a FEMA-designated area in the future, they would need to comply with the appropriate engineering and anchoring requirements. As such, this is consistent with what P&Z said, and it's consistent with what those who are interested in conservation care about. Donations were also discussed. So I want to talk a little bit about that. This resolution is to authorize the appropriation of the benches, tables, umbrellas, and chairs. It must be equal to the total amount anticipated to be spent. Should donations subsequently be pursued, it will reduce the amount of funding required and does not affect the current resolution. Again, we have to have a resolution for what's going to be spent. That's what we're authorizing, the spending amount. Any excess funds not used for these specific capital expenditures will replenish the original source of funding once the project is deemed completed and closed out by the Board of Finance. That is done twice a year, and therefore that is just the normal process. If, in fact, they fund $10,000 worth of benches, that will reduce what will be replenishing that source of funding. The F&B committee took all of the information. We determined that these purchases were reasonable, that the RTM needs to be involved in such Great Island capital investment, and the terms not to exceed $100,000 with very specific items to be purchased were acceptable. We did not take a vote. We took a sense of the meeting. In the sense of the meeting, the committee voted unanimously in favor of authorizing this appropriation and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. When we're putting items on the agenda, we like to have lead time, but in this case, the thought of the Great Island not having tables and chairs during the summertime, we thought maybe this would be a chance for us to act, and we couched it in such a way that it appears that the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance would probably push this along, and if it came to us after that, we'd be here in August trying to pass this. So I think we've couched it in such a way that it gives our imprimatur to the project, but also involves the other boards that will have to vote on this. Are there any other committees that happen to have a chance to talk about this? No. Any comments from the body? Oh, Amy? From a PZNH or from PZNH? Oh, well, then come up, please.
Hi, I'm Amy Zavatakis, District 5, Chair of PZNH. During our meeting on June 5th, the committee was meeting to discuss the lease matter, which is the next matter on the agenda. So we had an opportunity to discuss Great Island, and as I'll discuss in greater detail then, First Selectman McNally came and spoke with us, so we did have a chance to speak in general terms about this request. I will say that as far as our committee, there was definitely a sense that the idea of adding benches and tables and chairs to Great Island was something people were generally supportive of. However, when I asked for a sense of the meeting, it was determined that we felt we did not have enough information to provide any feedback to the RTM, particularly with the not knowing anything more specifically about the cost. So while it was discussed, I can't say that there is a sense of the meeting or a recommendation that I can make to the RTM at this time from PZNH.
Any other committees? Okay, any comments from the body? Yes, ma'am.
May have to turn the microphone on.
Yeah. And maybe tilt it a little toward you so that there.
Hi, I'm Jackie Miller, District 2. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good, Jackie.
I, like the rest of us, just learned about this today. I love the idea of benches and tables, but the last-minute nature of this request is troubling to me, especially given just how we went through the school budget with a fine-tooth comb We did eliminate positions in the school that $100,000 would have covered. And the fact that we now have $100,000 for tables and chairs that won't be in place for us to enjoy for the full summer, I just don't understand the rush for this right now, and I'm going to vote against it, and I hope some people join me in that. I'd love to approve this at a future date with more information.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Amy.
Sorry. Amy Zagrodzky. Oh, that's really low.
Yeah, take them. It's all adjustable, I think.
Okay. Is that?
Yeah, and that, I think that, yeah, just pick and pull it out and hold it.
There we go. Amy Zagrodzky, District 5. I just wanted to speak for myself personally. I didn't want to give too much, when I was speaking on behalf of the committee, of my personal feelings. I have to say that I agree that I'm not really sure I understand the rush to get this done at this time. As was discussed, the work on 23A is going to begin this summer. It's expected to take most of the summer, which means that the Great Island will not be open to town residents except on the weekends all summer. I would much prefer to see this as part of the early access request where we start to talk about parking and everything else, and have it go through the whole process of, looking more closely at the expenses and actually having a number before we're asked to vote on it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Jack? There. Well, he's speaking on behalf of himself.
Okay. So let me give this body a reality check. The fact of the matter is, this is going to be put before the Board of Selectmen in June. It's then going to go to the Board of Finance in July. They don't need our vote. They have enough funds sitting in the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures to approve this and take the RTM out of the picture. This was put on the agenda to ensure that the RTM precedent of being involved in these things is maintained. Do I like that it came to us last minute? No. Do I like that I don't have an exact price for $100,000? Guys, I've been here to ask you to build a school for $103 million on estimates, and you approve those. This is $100,000. As for the school, this is separate. These funds weren't going to the school. And we have to understand that the school is extremely well-funded, and when we add in the debt, it's much higher than several school parents tend to believe. So, this is what's happening here. We put this in front of you so that the RTM can have a say. If you don't want to have a say, you don't like how the process happened, vote no. But if you want to show that the RTM can be reactive to situations, that the RTM has a voice in Great Island, I recommend you vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Question, sir? Question, please.
Isn't this $100,000 being supplied?
Okay, get to the mic first, then go.
Doug Bernacki, District 5.
There you go.
Our Finance Committee as well. Jack's my chairman at the Finance Committee as well. Jack, isn't there a $60,000 lease that's part of going to raise money that's going to offset the $100,000 to $60,000 of it? And isn't they're not necessarily going to pay the whole $100,000 out. We're just giving them authorization to. Okay, thank you. I support you.
So two things that Doug requested. First, which you'll hear in my other report, so I can cut this out. if Amy doesn't mention it first, the $66,000 that we are adding upon approval of the lease extension goes into the Great Island Maintenance Fund. That is a separate fund that cannot be used for this capital expenditure. That's part of the reason why we were talking about a good definition of what comes out of each, so that the RTM and the town understands in transparency of what the various sources of funds are and what the approval rate is. So, no, we can't use that. And I'm sorry, Doug, what was your second part? Doug is right when he said this is simply the appropriation where we gave a little bit more. I suspect that this is going to be much less than $100,000. But because we don't have the final prices now, we wanted to give a little bit of leverage in here, a little bit of cushion, and then if it's not spent, and it can only be spent on the items that we identified, it can't be moved to someplace else. That's why it's very specific of the number of tables, number of chairs, and number of benches. Then that goes back into the source of funds for where we took it.
Thank you. Yeah, Cheryl.
Good evening, Cheryl Russell, District 2.
A little closer to the mic there.
Better?
Just
Jesus.
come closer to the mic there.
Oh,
Try that.
Swallow it. Okay, I've
Go
been on
ahead.
this RTM for 35 years plus. I find it very hard to have to swallow something at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and vote on it, and what the hell time is it? 8:30 at night. I like to do my homework. I like to know what I'm voting on. I like to have the background. I sometimes have to call town council and make sure we have this all straightened out and know what I'm doing. We don't know what we're doing. But I have a quick question, Jack. If we were to move not to go up to $100,000 and say we appropriate $30,000, can the Board of Finance override us and give the Great Island Committee the $100,000 that they're asking for?
Yes. In this particular case, yes.
I don't think that's the right way to do the people's business. I really don't. Well, wait a minute. Okay, let me finish here. I got a thing here. I think we have other projects, which I hate to bring up at this time, that are going to cost a few $1 million. And we were told when Great Island came to us that this was going to be spread out. Do I agree to have parking up there? Yes. Do I agree to have tables and chairs? Yes. Do I agree that we need garbage cans up there? Yes. But I don't think we need this pushed on us tonight, and I think we should lower the amount of $100,000. I think that the Board of Finance should listen to elected officials in this town. We're a body of 100 people.
Do you want me to give you some?
So, yeah, I just have a hard time swallowing this at this time. Thank you.
We had a choice here. This was pushed on us by Seth and myself. I don't like speaking to the wall.
Well, it's hard to.
This was pushed on us by Seth and myself. We didn't need to bring this forward. Cheryl, this could have been approved without us, and it would have been. And so, in order to try and have some transparency here, and to have a say, if you agree with picnic benches, the benches and the tables, vote for this. we are going to make sure that we have more information on anything else that's coming forward. I agree with you. I'm not happy based upon the timing that we had it, all right? But this isn't the first time in my 20 years of the RTM that we've taken something up quickly, all right? Sometimes we have to show that we actually can act on something. We're the only board that doesn't meet in July. Maybe we should now start scheduling July meetings. That can be done. So the fact of the matter is that the fact that this is here, we brought it forward so that the RTM has a say.
Thank you, Jack.
I mean, vote it down.
Yes, miss.
Hi, thank you. My name is Violet Aldea from District 6. In addition to everything that's been voiced, I think my concern is, or question has to do with facilitating picnic tables and the cleanup and really managing and maintaining people coming and eating in greater numbers at the park. So right now there's no parking, so you're probably walking over. You know, is there going to be staff that's going to actually maintain the park as well? If we're going to make the tables available, we need to be sure that we're not going to create a, you know, trash situation and rodent situation in the park as well. So that's my question.
1 second, Jack. We're doing this now because we don't meet again for when these could be used. This also, planning and zoning has passed this, but it still has to go through the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. So we're just sort of taking advantage of the fact that we have a meeting and that we could address this now. That's
I understand that part.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can.
Jack, you may have something to add.
First of all, the initial schedule is someplace like only 8 tables or so, I believe, is the test period, and it's to be in the stable area. Mark mentioned it in the use shape when you come in. Second of all, there is maintenance that we pay for there, and Public Works does currently clean up that, so that would be consistent with the area that they're cleaning up. So that's covered in what their normal duties would be, which we already do at the park.
Okay. Yeah, Tom?
Tom Moore, District 3. I think there's been quite a few good points made and things to talk about, but one thing I'd like to remind everyone, we just spent $85 million for the property. We're talking about a couple of picnic tables and benches for people to sit during the summer. I realize there's going to be construction, there'll be some disruption. $85 million, we're talking about a couple of benches so people can sit and enjoy the facility. That's all. I'm voting for it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other members of the body? Okay. Electors of the town? Don't see any of that. Okay, looks to me like you're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. Okay. Opposed? And let's get the count, guys. And abstentions, please. Okay. We'll move on while we're collecting the vote. Next item is approving the extension of the lease for 49 Great Island Road. Speaking on behalf of Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee, Amy Sabatakis. You're on, Amy.
You. Sorry, go ahead. Okay. Hi. Amy Zabatakis, District 5, Chair of RTM Planning, Zoning, and Housing. I move Resolution 2516, approving the lease extension agreement for 49 Great Island Road. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you. Without objection, I'll waive reading of the resolution. So on June 5th, 2025, the Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee held a special meeting with 9 of our 14 members present, representing a quorum. We received a presentation from Selectman Monica McNally regarding the status of the leases on Great Island and the master plan for Great Island. You'll recall in July of 2023, we approved 5 residential leases on Great Island. Then in February of 2024, approved the extension of those leases. Currently, there are 2 houses on Great Island that have tenants still in them. Of those, one does not intend to stay past the end of the term, which ends this summer. So there's just one lease that we're discussing tonight, and that's 49 Great Island Road, which is referred to as the greenhouse. You'll recall from Mark's presentation, that is the first house on your right after you enter the property beyond the traffic circle. The extension request is to approve the lease until July 31st, 2026 on the same terms as our existing, but there is one important change. With this new extension, the tenant can terminate the lease on 30 days' notice, and the town can terminate the lease on 90 days' notice. This ability to terminate is important so that the town can ask the tenant to leave early if needed once the next phase of work on Great Island is approved. And it also allows the tenant to terminate for any reason, which would most likely be if the work occurring negatively impacts their use of the property. We are, however, told that the tenant is aware of the upcoming work. Specifically, as was discussed this summer, the work on 23A will begin, which is the widening of the road. During that time period, the roadway will be closed during the week to town residents, so there will be no access to Great Island during the weekdays. However, on the weekends, that accessway will be opened. During the week, while the roadway is closed to town residents, there will be the ability for emergency vehicles, town maintenance vehicles, and the tenant to get back and forth on the road. So they will be able to obviously get to their house. It just will be a little bit more difficult. And so anyway, the tenant is aware of the work that's being discussed, and they are accepting of that and prepared to move forward with the lease for the next year anyway. The committee voted unanimously in favor of the residential lease extension, and we recommend the same to the RTM.
Speaking on behalf of the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis.
I get to come back to the podium. I'm Jack Davis, District 3 RTM Finance and Budget Chair. Amy, thank you for that report. I will not repeat areas that Amy mentioned. That brings me down to the fact that we, in approving this, have $66,000 that will be going into the Great Island Management Fund, and that will be used for the maintenance of Great Island. When the RTM approved the budget at our May 12th meeting, no revenue was anticipated to be received and put into that budget. Receipt of these funds should reduce future amounts of funds needed to be transferred into the fund for fiscal year 27, providing the planned maintenance meets the planned budget. The lease saves taxpayers money as the fund carries over its balances from year to year. In our budgets from 25 to 26, based upon the amounts that were still in that fund, the amount that was transferred, hence put into taxes, was reduced from the prior year. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee voted unanimously to approve this lease extension and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Speaking on behalf of Public Works, Rolf Oben.
Good evening. Rolf Oben, District 4 Public Works Committee Chair. We did not have a meeting with regards to this lease renewal, but I think I can speak for the committee. If anybody objects, please speak up. That we consider this lease renewal to be in the best interest of the town, and we recommend that the full RTM vote in favor of the lease agreement. Thank you.
I have the results on 2516, and 2518, and the motion passes. 36 in favor, 27 opposed, and 5 abstentions. So, looks like we'll have tables and chairs at Great Island, at least if we have anything to say about it. Now, any other committees wish to report on this item? No? Okay. Any remarks from the body? Okay. Electors of the town? Okay, looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. Noes? And abstentions. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the acceptance of a Sedan gift valued at $45,000 from At Home in Darien. Speaking on behalf of Public Health and Safety will be Lois. And thanks to Lois for operating the computer and the video today.
You're welcome. Good evening. I'm Lois Schneider, District 1, and member of the Public Health and Safety Committee. I move Resolution 25-17, acceptance of a gift valued at $45,000 from At Home in Darien. Do I have a second? Patty. Without objection, I waive the reading of the resolution. On Wednesday, June 4th, 2025, our committee met in a special Zoom meeting with 7 of 12 members present, making a quorum. The committee discussed the resolution to accept the gift of a donated vehicle. The Darien Foundation will contribute $40,000 towards the purchase of a new vehicle for At Home in Darien. At Home in Darien will cover any expenses above the $40,000. The actual cost of the sedan is estimated to be $45,000. The vehicle is registered to and insured by the town of Darien. The current vehicle has over 100,000 miles and will be used as backup until it becomes cost prohibitive. It was noted that the usage of the transportation services is up, which is a good thing, and the services are being used to assist seniors to get out for social events in addition to medical and errand trips. The committee thanks the Darien Foundation for their generous support of this needed vehicle, and At Home in Darien for their considerable support of our seniors. The Public Health and Safety Committee voted unanimously to accept this generous gift and asks the full RTM to do the same. Thank you.
Speaking on behalf of the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis. One second. Lois, do you need to start putting the video together? Or we? I'll just wait till he's done. Okay.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, RTM Finance and Budget Chair. Usually after Public Health and Safety, I would say thank you, Mac, because Lois gave it. The good thing for me is I don't have to lower the mic. All gifts greater than $12,500 need to be approved by the Board of Selectmen and the RTM. As such, this gift qualifies. I'm not going to go through things that were said. I want to let people know that the town is actually making the purchase of this vehicle. The town owns the vans for At Home at Darien and pays for the insurance and the repairs. At Home in Darien reimburses the town for those such costs. This significantly, and I mean significantly, reduces the cost to At Home at Darien and allows their operations to exist. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee voted unanimously in favor of accepting this gift and recommends the same to the full RTM. And we also want to thank At Home in Darien for their service. Thank you.
We don't have the vote on the last item for District 3. Who's collecting the votes up there, District 3? There we go. Any other committees wish to report on that? Okay. Remarks from the body? Yes. Oh, great.
I'm Andy Millar, District 4. I just want to take this opportunity to publicly thank At Home in Darien for services that it rendered to me. Last February, I had a severe ski accident and spent 1 week in the ICU and 7 weeks in rehab. Most of that time, I was unable to leave my bed. When I could finally get out, I was limited to a wheelchair. And At Home in Darien, when I was discharged, came with the wheelchair van, picked me up, and brought me home and pushed me into my home. So I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone involved with At Home in Darien, and particularly the generous donors who've contributed to it for what it did for me.
Yeah. Any others? Okay. I see none. Electors of the town? Don't see any. Looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. The next item on the agenda, by the way, is a presentation from the First Selectman on a housing bill that's pending before the Connecticut State Legislature and has a profound impact if it's passed. And Jon Zagrodzky asked if we would, he's got a few minutes, and asked if he would be able to show this presentation that he made. And so we added that to the agenda here at the end. Go.
On today's special edition of Ask the First Selectman, Jon Zagrodzky, our First Selectman, is going to talk to us a little bit about an important piece of legislation still awaiting review by the governor in Hartford. John, welcome to the program again.
Thank you, Jim. Happy to be here.
So some of our viewers may have heard about HB 5002, the housing bill. Could you tell us a little bit about what that would mean, having passed the legislature and awaiting the governor's signature, what that would mean if it was signed into law, how it would affect Darien?
Sure, and thanks for the question, Jim. Maybe I'll just back up and give kind of 30 seconds of context about why we're even having this discussion. So Connecticut faces a housing crisis like many states and municipalities around the country. And it's driven by the fact that we've seen significant inflation in housing prices across the country. And this is both in the value of homes if you want to purchase them and in the cost of just renting a place. I mean, anyone who's a parent of a young person in their 20s or 30s who's trying to get their child started in life, they're probably facing the same complaints, which is it's very difficult to find affordable housing really anywhere in Connecticut, certainly in the area where we live. And so for a long time, members of the legislature and others have been focused on trying to come up with some solutions for how they might approach this. And so a particular legislative solution that's been pushed by a number of groups has finally taken shape in the legislature this year. And it's the House Bill, HB 5002, and it has a number of components to it. I won't go through all of them. It's worth reading if you have some time, but some of the major provisions of that bill include the following provisions. The first one is this idea of as of right conversion of commercial. What that means is someone who owns a commercial building in a particular municipality would have the right to convert that to residential housing without the approval of zoning authorities in that town. Another provision is the allocation of what's called fair share housing. And what that means is that the bill assigns a quantity of affordable housing for each municipality that they're responsible for trying to zone or permit within their municipalities. And those are some pretty big numbers for towns like Darien, which I'll go into more in a minute in the letter that I sent to the governor. And there are some other provisions around the elimination of parking requirements for residential developments that have 24 or fewer units. In addition, there are provisions around lawsuit costs. So for example, if someone comes in and decides they want to file suit against a town for an 830G case, if the town loses that, the town would be responsible for covering the legal costs of that plaintiff. So all of this is pretty complicated. I'll summarize by saying that this entire bill that was passed by the legislature is an attempt to address the housing crisis in Connecticut. It has a number of important provisions in it that we think as a town, and I speak on behalf of the entire Board of Selectmen, as well as multiple elected officials, both Democratic and Republican in Darien. We believe this is against the interests of our town. And I've come together to say that we recommend that the governor veto it. Just so you know, when the legislature closed its session on June 3rd this year, or June 4th, actually just a few days ago, they passed this legislation and sent it to the governor for his signature. And so he has until about June 20th to sign that bill or veto it. And there are lots of pressure groups on both sides of the issue that are trying to convince him one way or the other. But as I said, that as my point of view as First Selectman, I'm joined by a number of other officials, and we believe that the governor should veto this legislation.
And what can our viewers do if they're concerned about this?
Well, the first thing is I'm going to send to you, Jim, a copy of the letter that I sent to the governor a couple of hours ago that outlines specifically what the town of Darien's concerns are. What I would recommend is that anybody take a few minutes to read through that letter so you can see what those concerns are. And if you feel so motivated, there are ways to reach out to the governor's office. Of course, by email is probably the most efficient. So he'll get that as well as his staff, and they can review any concerns that you have. So if you want to add your voice to that, I would highly recommend it. There are two provisions in the bill that the town is particularly concerned about. The first one pertains to this notion of fair share allocation. So what they do in the bill is they've allocated to each town in Connecticut a certain number of affordable housing units that they would like each town to plan for in terms of zoning or permission so that someone in the future could build that housing. And for the town of Darien, that's 1,967 units. And just to put that in context, in the last 20 years, we've been able, including some housing that's planned, like at Thorndale Circle and the rest of the Corbin Drive developments, we will have built about 300 affordable housing units in town. And that's been a big stretch to do that, because keep in mind, Darien is 98% developed. But this bill is going to require us to plan for 1,900 of those units. And we have to start off by at least doing plans for about 492 of those units. And so keep in mind that every time we've developed housing that's affordable, it's been part of a larger complex. In other words, it's not all just a single affordable housing development. And right now, what we require is developers to make 14% of the units they build affordable. And so if you think about that, even if we were just to plan for 492 units, if developers were going to stick with that 14% number, that would mean we'd have to build more than 3,500 units at a minimum in Darien to meet the affordable housing requirements in this bill. And by comparison, Darien's a town of 21,000 people. We have about 7,000 residences. Imagine for a moment that we would go from 7,000 to 10,500 units just to satisfy the affordable housing requirements in this bill. There is no scenario where that is a reasonable objective for the town of Darien. It's simply not possible. And it just gets to this point to where, in my view, and the view of many other elected officials, Democrat and Republican, that this bill is simply infeasible for our town, and we need to start over with something different. Look, as I've said in the letter, which Jim is going to make available both on TV 79 and on social media, we're ready to sign up to try to help solve the affordable housing crisis in Connecticut. But this is flawed legislation that imposes targets on the town that, in my judgment, are not just infeasible, but irresponsible.
We'll put the contact information for the governor's office if anybody who is watching this wants to reach out and offer their opinions. And John, I want to thank you for joining us for another edition of Ask the First Selectman.
I wouldn't call that House bill pleasant reading, but it certainly is one that you want to read and take a look at it. I mean, you can see what, I think John hit the key points, and if it gets passed, it's clearly sort of trying to impose a solution rather than let us work out ways to solve the problem ourselves. Item 2517 passed 66 in favor, no noes, 2 abstentions. 2516, the lease, passed 66 in favor, 1 no, 1 abstention. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Lois. All in favor? Please rise. Enjoy summer.